All right, so it's shortly after 7 on Monday, October 4th, 2021 for our Adelaide Metcalfe Council meetings, and I'll call it to order. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? We just have the one noted there.
Yes.
It's item 9A, I think. Oh, Councilor McKinnon, there you go.
Yes, I have one on 9A.
Okay. So, and that's in regards to the Crothers-McFarland municipal drain bylaw.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. And just to note for everybody watching live on YouTube or later on, Councilor McKinnon, she has a little camera logo thing on her her square there, and we're trying to work that through with IT so we can see her her face on the screen there. So hopefully soon we'll be able to get that all fixed up. Before we get into the rest of the agenda, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to all of our staff, from administration to the roads department and to the fire department, for all your hard work the last, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, during the emergency declaration with all the rain that happened in Adelaide Metcalfe. A lot of work was put in there and a lot of extra hours. And I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you've done. Having those road closures up, getting the information out to everybody on Facebook and communications on our website. You guys did an excellent job, and thankfully nobody washed away in the Sydenham River, because it got up pretty high there for a few days in September, which is quite odd for this time of year. The other thing I want to mention is on September 30th, our staff wore their orange shirts for the first Truth and Reconciliation Day in Adelaide Metcalfe and across the country and Canada. And I just want to make note of that. And you guys had a great photo out front of the township office and posted that on Facebook. And it's great to see that you've done that and participated in Orange Shirt Day and Truth and Reconciliation. And I hope that everybody took a little time to take some time to reflect on that day. So with that, I'm going to move into the minutes of our previous meeting, and those are from September 21st. 2021. If have a mover and seconder for those minutes. Okay, Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. And with that, we're going to move into our Court of Revision, and that's why we have Mike DeVos here from Streets Associates. So we need to have a motion that Council adjourn its regular meeting in order to sit as the Court of Revision under Section 97 of the Drainage Act as amended to consider the Peters Drain 2021. Okay, Councillor Brody, Deputy Mayor Hendricks, all those in favor? And that's carried. And this is the Peters Drain. So this Court of Revision is pursuant to the report prepared by Streets Associates dated June 14th, 2021, which was considered and adopted at the consideration meeting held on September 7th, and pursuant to bylaw number 56 of 2021, which received 2 readings by council at its regular meeting, also on September 7th. Section 54(1) of the Drainage Act provides that the decision of the Court of Revision can be appealed to the Drainage Tribunal within 21 days from the date of the Court of Revision, and the final day of appeal will be on Monday, October 25th. So with that, I'll call it to order, and I will hand it over to Mike or to Andrew, I think. Is that the plan? Whoever wants to take it.
Okay, I can take it. Yeah, to my knowledge, there's been no appeals submitted. So beyond that, I have no comment.
Excellent. So is there any questions at all from members of council? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So we just jump right to the decision. So the recommendation is that the assessment for the construction contained in the report of the Peters Drain 2021 as prepared by Streets Associates dated June 14th, 2021 be confirmed as presented. Mover and seconder, Councillor Clark and Deputy Mayor Hendricks. All those in favor? And that's carried. And now we just need to have a motion to adjourn the Court of Revision at, where's my time, 7:07. Councillor Brody, and seconded by Deputy Mayor Hendricks. All those in favor? And that's carried. All right, is that it for Mike DeVos? Is that it? That's got to be somewhat of a new record. All right, thank you, Mike.
Good night.
Okay, so moving to the correspondence, our upcoming conferences, seminars, and meetings. So our next meeting is on Monday, October 18th, and that's including some planning applications, and then followed by Monday, November 1st. So the first item for correspondence is from the Middlesex London Board of Health meeting update, and that's from September. And the second one is a media release from the Health Unit issues Section 22 class orders for nightclubs and social gatherings. And then the only item for an action required is in regards to support for rural funding for infrastructure. So that'd be major bridges and culvert replacements. Any, Councillor Clark?
Yeah, I move that we support that.
Okay, do you have a seconder? Everybody should put in their hands up, perfect. Councillor Brody? Any discussion on it at all? All those in favor? And that's carried. And then we just need to have a motion to file items CC 1 and 2. Okay, Councillor Brody and Councillor Clark, all those in favor? And that's carried. So moving to our staff reports, and the first one is from our drainage super, and it's regarding the Two Hill drain, and it's to accept the request and appointment of an engineer. Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you can see, the staff received a request to extend and enclose the Two Hill drain downstream under Section 78 of the Drainage Act. Staff went to investigate the situation at 1785 Patterson Drive. It was agreed for the meantime that it would make sense to do a bottom clean out, which I've already initiated that process to begin. It seems that the last time any major works were done on this drain was from the 1960s. So what we had done is we sent out notices to notify other landowners upstream of the request that the municipality had received. This is both to notify and to gather information before the engineer is appointed to see if anyone else is interested in participating in this. At this point, it doesn't seem to be that anyone else is interested upstream. After giving sufficient time to respond, work upstream.
Andrew, just so you know, your audio is kind of cutting out.
Okay. Maybe I'll shut the camera off. That might help. Okay, how about now? Is that any better?
Yes, much better.
Okay. So given the fact that no major works were done on this drain, and it is within the rights of the municipality to extend a drain downstream under Section 78 of the Drainage Act, it is reasonable to accept this request and to appoint Street and Associates to write a report to carry out this work under the Drainage Act. Oh, and I should also note that we are very early on in the process, that it is there's still plenty of time for other property owners upstream to extend this this work under 78 as a reconstruction. Given the fact that this drain is quite old, I do expect that to happen.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. I saw Councillor Clark's hand up.
Yeah, just to cause a little bit of trouble here. So do we just carte blanche always just pass the baton to Street and Associates? Are they price competitive? Or I know there was one bit of work that we had done a few months ago, and I'm not advocating for Ray Dobbin out of Petrolia, but I guess I'm just asking, are we getting the best price for the work being performed? And are there other engineers in the game, or is it just Street and Associates?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is a reasonable question. Right now, we have a good relationship with Spree, and they provide us a service that is reasonable in price as far as I can see. They do reasonable work, and the process that they follow is I think is solid. So if it is council's wish to appoint another engineer, that is up to council. But at this point, I do remain reasonably convinced that Street does do solid work.
It's price competitive.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Is there any other questions or comments at all? Okay, so we have the recommendation in front of us. I just didn't know from Councillor Clark's comments if you wanted to put forward something else, or if we're looking for a mover and seconder for the recommendation. And that recommendation is for that council appoint Streets and Associates to write a report to reconstruct the Two Hill drain based on the request received from owners of concession 5, lot 7 of the former Metcalfe Township, which is 1785 Patterson Drive. We have a mover and seconder for that. Okay, Councillor Brody, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hendricks. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
All right, so the next one is a report from our fire chief, one that I really don't want to see, but I'll hand it over to our Chief Nordoff.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't really want to report this either, but there goes. So just to give you some background on my experiences here. So in 1982, I joined the Adelaide Metcalfe Fire Department as a volunteer firefighter and worked my way up the ranks, serving as firefighter, training officer, captain, deputy chief, and for the last 20 years as chief. In January of 2011, I was hired on as a full-time employee of the township and served as fire chief, alternate CEMC, health and safety coordinator, covered wastewater treatment plant worker, and performed some other duties as required. I was also active in many countywide activities, including chairing the Middlesex County Fire Training Association for 6 years, performed training for the Middlesex London Health Youth Serve team, just to mention a few. In 2013, I was appointed by the fire marshal as fire coordinator for the county of Middlesex. But now the time has come for me to retire. This decision didn't come easy, as the fire service has been a huge part of my life for almost 40 years, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And that is mainly due to the members of the fire department who are the best anyone could ever work with. In addition, I have enjoyed working with township staff, county staff, and counterparts across the province. So having said this, my retirement date, I said, is December the 31st, 2021.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I just want to say thank you on behalf of council for all the hard work you put in over the last number of decades in Adelaide Metcalfe. You've worked with a lot of firefighters, you've worked with a lot of different administrative staff, mayors, councils. You have the respect of a lot of members of our community. It's amazing the work that you've done, and it's not an easy job either to be the fire chief. I just want to thank you very, very much for all your hard work. And December 31st is going to come quick, and it's cool. You're going to have we have some very big shoes to fill. The other thing I want to just mention is it's interesting. My first council meeting, which was in December of 2010, that meeting was the meeting that council decided that you were going to go from a volunteer fire chief to the decision of going to a full-time fire chief from Adelaide Metcalfe. So every time, whenever I think about how I started out in Adelaide Metcalfe, you're always you're there because that was just the decision that we made, was switching from your position of volunteer to full-time. And I just wanted to make that note for you. Does anyone else on council want to make any comments? Councillor Brody.
Yeah, just what Curtis said. Thanks for all your great work, Aaron. You've done a great job, and I know the fire department really value you as their top dog. I know that for sure. So, thanks a lot.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks, you have your hand up. You're on mute, just so you know.
I just want to echo the thanks of everybody in the township. And unfortunately, I've had the opportunity to see you a couple more times than I'd like to during the last few years. But it's always been professional, and I appreciate all the service you've given to the township.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, and thanks again, Aaron. You have not only the respect of council, but you have the respect of the community, which there's no value I can put on that. So you're so well thought of in the community, and I think you need to hold your head high and really soak that in, because you really deserve it. So congratulations.
Okay, and with that, we need to have a motion that the report entitled Retirement Fire Chief Aaron Nordoff be received for information. Okay, Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, thank you, Chief. And the next one that goes hand in hand with the last report, the fire chief recruitment process, and that's from our CEO, Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. Of course, not overly excited about the chief's retirement. That report marks a sad day today, but it's also a celebration for the chief and all the great work that he's done, not only for Adelaide Metcalfe, but also the county at large. I'd like to reiterate the same sentiments of council, but on behalf of staff. Chief, it's absolutely been a pleasure to work with you, to learn from you, and to grow the township with you. I know staff have nothing but excellent things to say about you, and that's a pretty strong legacy to leave behind. I also know that we're not letting you move out of the township anytime soon, so I fully expect you to pop in and say hi. And if I see any planning applications or anything that suggests you're moving, I'm probably going to try to put a stop to it. So you're stuck with us for quite some time. So absolutely appreciate everything that you've been able to do for the community, and of course Middlesex County at large. So thank you, Chief. In saying that, we do have to turn our heads to, as the mayor said, filling some rather large shoes. So with regard to the recruitment process for our next fire chief, I'd like to, of course, follow council's hiring policy and recommend that council appoint Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councillor Mike Brody to a hiring committee along with myself. The recruitment process will follow much of the same process that we did for the clerk and the treasurer recently. So we'll post a job advertisement as soon as Wednesday. Given that we have about 3 months to fill a very large community-focused role. So the job advertisement will be out there for about 3 weeks, which should be a good time to solicit internal and external applications. During the week of November 1st, I'll bring the hiring committee together to review any potential applications for the role, and we'll work to shortlist down to a few folks who we can interview for the position. Interviews will be scheduled between on November 8th and November 19th, preferably earlier in that timeline, of course, so we can have some time with the process. Once the hiring committee completes interviews, and if they are ready to make a recommendation to council, we will work with the clerk and council to set up a special meeting of council to review and consider the recommendation by the hiring committee. If council is satisfied with the recommendation, then the appropriate documentation would be presented at the December 6th council meeting, where we would effectively appoint our next fire chief. Given the timing of the hiring process, we really don't have much room for some overlap, but thankfully the chief has told me he's not going anywhere anytime soon. And I'm going to put roadblocks at every major exit of the township to hold on to him pretty tight, but he did offer some support to the hiring process and onboarding of our next fire chief. So thank you for that, chief, much appreciated. I guess I'll open it up for any questions from council. Otherwise, I'd kindly ask that council approve the recommendations in the report.
Hey, thank you, Morgan. Is there any questions at all? Okay, I don't see any. So those recommendations in front of us are that council form a fire chief hiring committee consisting of Deputy Mayor Marianne Hendricks and Councillor Mike Brody and CAO Morgan Calvert. And further, that council direct the CAO to proceed with the posting and recruitment process for the township fire chief position. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Okay, Councillor Clark and Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. All right, the next one there is the COVID-19 vaccination policy, and that one is from Morgan.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. As council knows, this is the first time council is really seeing this policy. It is meant to potentially start a series of steps with regard to our COVID-19 response. So for example, if council adopts a policy in its current form, management will need to turn around some protocols that fit within the policy by November 8th when vaccination disclosure is due. Given the latest recommendations from the Medical Officer of Health, members of council and staff have asked for a form of COVID-19 vaccination policy that meets our context. Our context being a small rural municipality who currently cannot work from home in any lengthy capacity due to things like IT infrastructure and the nature of our paper-based or manual processes today. This really has been a challenging policy to develop. However, I believe we have found a balance given all the competing factors surrounding this topic. I have spoken with legal and received their endorsement of this policy as it does balance our challenges with the Occupational Health and Safety Act, the Municipal Act with regard to health and safety, and the Employment Standards Act as it relates to potential for constructive dismissal. In saying this policy does provide 2 lanes for current staff. If you are vaccinated, you must follow the normal health protocols that are already in place, such as wearing a mask, maintaining distance when possible, complete the COVID-19 survey prior to commencing work, use hand sanitizer, clean areas after use, among other protocols as required. Essentially, if you are unvaccinated or choose not to disclose vaccination status, you must complete a rapid COVID-19 testing protocol each week. This protocol, as recommended by the Middlesex Island Health Unit, outlines that unvaccinated folks or those who have not disclosed their vaccine status, who are working in the office Monday to Friday, should be tested or testing themselves 3 times a week. For new staff, the requirement will be that any employment negotiation will require them to be fully vaccinated. This provides a choice to potential new employers prior to working for the township. Of course, over the weekend and into Monday, as this policy has been posted on the council agenda, I have received and had a number of discussions with council and of course staff as well. So in speaking with members of council, a few areas were brought forward as discussion items. So one was whether or not the policy will be in place forever. This policy will be reviewed for relevancy per the review provision in the policy. However, we could amend the policy to include the word temporary in the actual title if that provides better clarity. The potential, so the second topic that came up was the potential for provincial or health unit vaccination policies. So essentially, if the province or the Middlesex Island Health Unit comes out with a policy that we do not align with, I would either bring back an amended policy for council's consideration, or ask council to repeal this policy in favor of provincial or health unit guidelines. The third thing that came up was that there was discussion around the requirement for new folks and their potential employment or contract with the township. Right now, the policy is written, as written, requires anyone new to the township, whether staff, contractors, volunteers, or students, who are eligible for COVID-19 vaccine, be vaccinated as part of their employment contract. If they choose not to be vaccinated, then the employment negotiation would be frustrated and the individual will not be hired by the township. So if this is something that council wishes to change, what I could do is amend the policy in a way to provide new folks to be treated the same as current folks if council wishes. By requiring new folks to be vaccinated, we are more in line with what public health is saying about vaccination policies. The vaccination policy should be mandated for all workers. So we're already a little off that lane today, but again, we're recognizing our context as a small and rural municipality. Finally, the other question that came up was whether or not this policy applies to council. This policy is an administrative only policy for staff or municipal workers as defined in the policy. If council wishes to consider something like this for itself, then I would recommend that council consider looking at its council code of conduct. And I'd be happy to work with council to bring that forward if council chooses. So these policies really, they'll never be perfect and are only intended to reduce the risk of transmission, not to prevent it altogether. Public health has acknowledged that those who are unvaccinated have a higher potential of contracting COVID-19, which is why we have an additional layer of detection or mitigation for unvaccinated folks, which is the testing protocol. Finally, at council's direction, I would prefer to monitor this policy very closely if and when there comes a time where COVID-19 response no longer requires a policy such as this. At that time, and if appropriate, I would recommend to council repealing the policy. I'll leave it there for now and open it up for any discussion or questions from council. Otherwise, I'd kindly ask council to approve the recommendation as outlined in the report.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. And before we get to questions, just welcome back, Councilor McKinnon. We got the all the IT issues all figured out. You're able to hear us and see us, and we're all good.
I can hear and I can see you. And thank goodness for the IT people. Kevin and Ryan are really helpful. So thank goodness.
Perfect. All right. Is there any questions or comments on this proposed policy? Okay, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, so we've talked about staff and we've talked about council. How does the fire department align in with this as well?
So Chief, I'll let you jump in there if you like, but what I would say is the fire department does fall underneath this policy. What we haven't done yet, because it's that series of steps. So if council does approve this policy or this form of policy, what the chief and I would do is work towards some form of protocol that satisfies the health and safety requirements of the firefighters, including those who they interact with during emergency services related incidents. Chief, I kick it over to you. I think that's pretty much what we talked about at our management meeting.
Yes, we did. And just a couple things. One is most municipalities who have approved a policy very similar to this have included their volunteer fire department. The other one is, are volunteers, because volunteers is mentioned in this policy, or are they part-time paid on-call staff? So it depends how you look at that word volunteer.
Otherwise, there's still individuals who are acting on behalf of the township, which is within scope of the policy.
So the policy would just extend to them and that would be satisfactory, I think. Okay.
Okay, is there any other questions, Councillor Brody?
Through you, Curtis, to everybody. I like the idea of having this as a temporary policy. As we know, a lot of things are changing, and if the government comes out with more rules, we probably will have to follow. If they don't, hopefully we don't have to follow, and hopefully this all gets better, but we don't know that answer. So I do like the talk of this just being a temporary policy.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brody. Any other questions or comments, Deputy Mayor Hendricks or Councillor McKinnon?
No, I think it satisfies all the concerns I have right now. Yeah, if we're testing the ones that aren't vaccinated and everyone else is careful, I don't think we can do more than that. And I agree temporary, because there are, I mean, there's even talk in the scientific community about treatment coming down the road in the next few years. So, you know, anything's possible.
Okay, Councillor McKinnon? You just muted yourself again.
Just to reiterate what Marianne said, just on the radio this morning, it was saying that they have an oral pill that you can take that they're testing in the United States, and they're quite hopeful that that will help in this situation with the pandemic. So I agree with all of the comments made previously by all of the councillors.
All right. The only thing I'll say before we go to the recommendation, so Morgan and I had a lengthy conversation earlier today, just with myself, just addressing a number of concerns that I can potentially see in the future with this policy. We did discuss that, and I'll just leave it at that. So with that, we have the recommendation in front of us, and that is that Council approve the COVID-19 vaccination policy as attached, and that the COVID-19 vaccination policy be incorporated into the corporate policy manual. And I know, Councillor Brody, you're liking the idea of having temporary in there. So Morgan, are you just going to update that to include temporary in the title?
Yeah, absolutely. I can put temporary in the title. It's a minor change and sounds like council is good with it. So absolutely.
Okay. So we'll just have that as updated as discussed, something like that from our clerk. Perfect. So do we have a mover and seconder for that? Okay, moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, we'll move into our next report, and that is the budget to actual, and that's from August 2021, and that's from our treasurer, Johnny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to council, we have in front of us the August 2021 budget to actual report. When reviewing this report, we are seeing about 90% of the township revenue being recognized due to the billing of the final taxes in August. One item to note for revenue is a possible delay in OMPF funding. We are nearing the final stages of our audit, which would then trigger the FIR to be completed, which is required for the release of these funds. To date, we've seen an increase of about $136,000 over budget for some of our supplemental tax billings, and that's due to new builds, additions, or renovations that would typically increase the overall assessment value. On the flip side, we are seeing a $24,000 increase over budget for some of tax reductions, and that's mainly due to the tax incentive approvals. So that's moving from a residential to farm, which is a common thing here in Adelaide Metcalfe. From an expenditure perspective, we've only seen about 38% of budget used. Again, this is similar to last month, as we are awaiting large projects related to public works, which make up about half of this budget. As always, I provided a summary for each department and noted of any issues, and just a brief explanation of some of the spending to date. The recommendation is that the budget to actual report for August 2021 be received for information, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, is there any questions at all for Johnny? Deputy Mayor Hendricks.
My questions are unfortunately just about small amounts. The big stuff seems to be fun. The supplementary, how much of that is attributed to MPAC being lagged a year? So should some of that, or do we not have the ability to book that into a previous year? Because MPAC is lagging on getting brought up to date. And is that an issue? I don't know if it is. The other thing I had a concern about, and it is a small amount, is the animal control. We keep hearing that through COVID, more and more people have gotten pets, and yet our numbers of dog tags are down. And I know we don't want to spend the money auditing that and driving around at this point, but can we maybe have an information piece out about why people should get their pets licensed, or their dogs anyway? I think it's lost revenue, even though it's not a lot. People should be paying license fees for the services that they get with it.
For sure. So to answer your first part of your question about the supplementals, so MPAC is typically behind, but unfortunately booking that in prior years, usually the calendar year is closed, so we have to book it in the current year. But when we do bill that back, we bill the associated tax rate. So if it's related to 2019 or 2020, for example, they'll be applied against those corresponding rates. We will receive that revenue all in the current year when it's billed, though. So it isn't something we can go back. For your second question there, that's a very good point. We can definitely put out some communication. I can work with the clerk, utilize some of our social media, and get the word out there. Yeah, it is a harder one to push just because people do have to come forward. I know we didn't have the door-to-door tagging this year because of COVID, and we did see the corresponding cost decrease because of that. But we can definitely utilize social media and try to get the word out there.
And just to that point, in our agreement with the Glencoe Animal Shelter, are they planning on going, or is it next year that they're going around, or what year are they actually going door to door? Do we know?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm not sure if anybody else is aware of that. I can follow up and get back to you unless.
Okay. I saw our clerk's hand up as well, but I don't know if you have the answer.
I through your worship to the rest of council. I don't have that answer. We can follow up very quickly, and we'll just work on reviewing the obligations under that agreement and putting out some communications in that regard.
Perfect, because yes, this is the second year that we've just mailed out the tag, so it's a matter. We haven't really. We're 2 years behind on any potential new dogs if the owners haven't came forward and registered them. So that could be the case as well. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, it's not just that. There's going to be property owners that are actually landlords that may not be aware of a dog being there, and perhaps some little gentle reminder could be included with the tax bill that they're going to be responsible for that as well. So yeah, just a little bit of a push there.
Okay, is there any other questions on the budget to actual?
I like it.
Okay, so we have the recommendation that the report entitled Budget Actual Report for August 2021 be received for information. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor? And that's carried. The next one also from Johnny is the 2022 budget process.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council, this report is really to kick off the 2022 budget and outline the overall process we're undertaking this year. The budget just really serves as an outline of how monies that come into the township will be spent to maintain and improve everything in the township. This year will be a bit of a change. We'll be presenting two budgets, one being the operating and the second being a capital budget, which will then roll up into one combined budget, which council is quite familiar with. So the operating budget will highlight kind of the plan for day-to-day operations, which include salaries, materials, supplies, and some operational projects. We will be undertaking a zero-based budget this year. This means that the budget will be built on what's needed and a detailed explanation justifying all costs in the budget. So not necessarily what was budgeted in prior years. So it's really a detailed look going line by line and really understanding what we're budgeting. The approach here is that there is a potential to lower costs by keeping old and new expenses in check. The second component here is the capital budget, which will highlight those major projects. In the past, these were lumped into one line item within the various departments called capital expenses. This year this will be separated into a separate budget, and each project will be broken out with an explanation of the work being done and why. This will also allow us to determine the proper financing strategy for each project, for instance, gas tax, OCIF, or utilizing various reserves. This will also provide council a better view of the project staff is recommending. In addition, this provides an easier way of communicating progress, updates on various projects through the monitoring phase in 2022. Also new for the 2022 budget process, we'll be rolling out an online budget survey to engage our residents in this year's budget process. This will be coming out shortly. We are just kind of fine tuning it right now. So I would recommend everyone kind of stay tuned to our socials and our website with the details on there. Also, we've developed a budget roadmap this year, which will highlight the overall process in developing this year's budget. You can find this on the second page, the attachment there. So staff will begin working on the budget this month. This survey should also wrap up in November, and I'll be presenting the results to council just so you understand what the community is thinking. The draft budget should be prepared for council to review in December. We will be preparing a budget booklet, just a package for council to take a look at over the holidays, if you wish, before our January presentation to council. From that point, we'll address questions, comments from council, and then in February, we'll look at presenting a revised budget and hopefully have the budget passed in March. So yeah, the recommendation is to receive the report as presented, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. Is there any questions at all in the budget process? Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm really happy that we've got a process nailed down. I just have one concern, given the agricultural nature of our township, getting answers to a survey from a certain segment of our population that'll be quite busy in October, you know, unless it keeps raining.
No, that's a very good point. Yeah, we can look at maybe extending it. When do you think would, like, how long of a window do you think would work best for the community?
Well, and that it's different every year. So,
Fair.
but this year, you know, if it dries up, the harvest is early. Other years, September and early October would probably work, and some years November is the busiest month. So
Oh, okay.
it's I think it'll probably, given that most farmers are now pretty agile on their phones, if it's something that they can do online easily, I think you'll get some response.
Okay. That sounds good. And also just to note too, With all the change that we've experienced this year with staffing and the overall budget process, my plan is in the future to have the budget survey come out earlier on, say like July, August, and be kind of better equipped to go through the budget process with those answers already in hand. So.
Okay, is there any other questions at all? Morgan.
Not a question, but more so just building on what Johnny was talking about. Every year, we're going to try to get a little earlier with our budget process so that we can get the budget completed. So we have a full year with the budget. Right now, we're aiming for March. In the past, it's been June or July. I know that's caused some headaches for council as well. The later in the year it goes, a lot of the questions that we received during the budget discussions last year were more about year-to-date spending or patterns-based spending. That we'll still have those patterns or those previous years year-to-date spending. However, because we won't have the completed audit at that time, we're not going to have that, true end of the year year-to-date spending, right, Johnny? So that's why we want to focus on a zero-based budget, because now we can justify almost every dollar to the penny why the expense is going to be the expense. So it's going to be a little bit of a philosophy change with regard to how we're presenting budget, but we're going to be focused more on providing the justification for the budget requirement and not so much patterns-based budgeting from previous years. So we get to improve on our process this year, and we'll improve on it again next year. And then to your point, Deputy Mayor Hendricks, we will get that budget survey out earlier in the year, because we're basically going to be moving those timelines closer to the summer rather than closer to Christmas break. So. And all thanks to Johnny.
All right, is there any other questions at all? Councillor McKinnon.
So given the timeline, will this make us later in sending out our tenders for some of our jobs, our road construction and that? So my concern is that in the past, we haven't gotten our tenders out in a timely manner, and a lot of the construction companies get their work lined up early and we get high prices. So how will that affect that?
Yeah, that's a very good point. The goal, like Morgan mentioned there, the goal is to kind of speed up this budget process and have it done maybe at the end of the year instead of spanning over the following year. Unfortunately, due to our timing, if we can pass a budget earlier, I'm 100% for that. It will obviously depend on what we bring forward and what council feels about that. So it will all be dependent on what we bring in January and any changes, but we could very well pass a February budget. But yeah, the goal is to have an earlier budget to take advantage of the that better pricing that occurs when we beat out a lot of the larger cities.
Morgan, you have something to add to that before I go to Councillor?
Yeah, just to build on the practice. Johnny wasn't here last year, so one of the things that we did to expedite some of those tendering processes was essentially we had a comfort level from council that they wanted to do project road. So what we did was release the tenders, Coulter, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but we released the tenders with a caveat that upon budget approval. So that way we were able to launch those tenders a little earlier. The only thing that does is create a little bit of uncertainty for the industry, because now they're responding to something that's still pending budget approval. So to Johnny's point, of course, we want to clean that up, get out there sooner with more certainty. But at the same time, we can also gauge council and what it wants to do, and then respond accordingly to get those things out in time. And I don't think Coulter, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we had any issues with that language last year.
No, actually, Morgan, it worked out pretty well. And last year we did do a full overview of all of our tenders. So it was quite a process, and we still got some very competitive pricing. So every year, as Johnny and Morgan mentioned, we are going to be more efficient. So Really looking forward to passing an earlier budget. So,
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, and my memory serves that Coulter was right on the ball for that one, and that they were done a little sooner than they had been done in the past. So that was good. My only comment is there not always going to be a lag with accounts payable like the OPP? Is there not always going to be a lag in that billing, or am I wrong?
Yeah, and if there is, we can just accrue for that. So that's just the accounting entry directly.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. The only two questions that I have are two comments. The first one is just on the survey, and I know Morgan and I talked about this a while ago, and my main concern is just how that survey is going to get out to the public. And I'm not sure if just utilizing the website and Facebook page, and if you even want to throw in local media outlets as well, I don't think that's enough. I know that surveys are hard for the public, no matter what survey it is, no matter where it is, the responses are never as high as what you would like. But I think that maybe we should be mailing something out. It doesn't take too much to have something sent out as that flyer mail that goes out with the Age Dispatch or whatever it is every Thursday. I think that would be a great opportunity to get an information out to every mailbox in the municipality to let them know that there is a survey. And then the other one that I was wondering about was, so in January, we have the Departments Address Council and Community Questions and Comments. I just want to make sure that we do have a process as to how we're going to inform the public that they are able to, this is the document and this is the time that you can come and speak, and what that process is. So I guess the main one right now is just, are we going to do more with the survey than the website and Facebook?
Yeah, and that's completely up to council. The reason why we chose or thought about doing the web-based using social media was mainly due to the cost. Looking at the cost to mailing, just for a cost of a stamp versus the creation of that, we're well into probably a couple $1,000s. So again, it is up to council how you want to go about that. But there is a cost to that communication.
And I'm not suggesting mailing out the actual survey. I'm saying a flyer of some sort, and I think that's 10 cents a page that goes out to the flyer mail. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, and I was thinking it was cost prohibitive to go that way too, that the web-based and even an ad in the local paper or whatever might be suffice. I'm not sure, because the thing is, if it's just a flyer, that'll be treated like junk mail and it might not be read. So, and it is like there's a cost to that. So I would be in support of just doing the web and an ad in the paper, but that's just my comment.
Councillor Brody.
Yeah, there's well, by the time you have the age and the banner, I think that's getting dispersed pretty good, along with the web. Keep our costs down on it and see what happens from there. And then I guess the comment of Curtis's with the departments for January, I guess we'll have to see, how many responses we get, how we handle that accordingly. Like, we don't really know until, like, we may have 10 valid comments, we may have 1,000. We don't know. So until we know that, it's pretty hard to decide what we're going to do this soon.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, and to reiterate Curtis's point, whenever you do a survey, if you get 5 or 10%, you've hit pay dirt. I mean, you don't expect a huge response, so you have to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, and I realize that we're not going to have a huge number. It's just, I don't want at the end of the process the community saying, what did you do? How did you engage the public? How did you engage myself as a taxpayer on whatever side road? And the fact is that unless you have you're taking out a building permit or you're doing something specific, you're likely not going to go to our township website, and not everybody's on Facebook. And that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out, is what kind of means of communication do we have, should we be doing in the community? And I don't know what that is, but I certainly know that the website and Facebook it won't be enough. That's all. Morgan?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, through you to council, just to kind of complement what you're saying, we don't have a lot of or a high degree of internet access in the township. So we could be creating, an online bias to our budget response. There is that opportunity. At the same time, it is fairly costly to mail it. We'll have created a small flyer or a pamphlet or something with a QR code, for example. And to Johnny's point, to mail it out, it's a buck and a bit to each resident. And I think we have about 21 homes or addresses in the township. So it is cost prohibitive. So what we could do is include this conversation as part of our 2022 budget conversation so that we can improve on our survey practice, our budget survey practice, if we have a low response rate to our web and media-based survey. So I guess what I wouldn't want to see is the conversation die, because it's hard to put a cost on citizen engagement, but at the same time, we also have to be conscious about our costs. So if we're walking into budget looking pretty good, maybe this is something that we add.
Councilor McKinnon, I saw your hand up.
Yes, I was just going to suggest that everybody gets a tax bill pretty well. I would say 85% of the ratepayers receive a physical tax bill. Why not put a little note in there about the survey?
Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
For next year, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So is there any other questions or comments on the 2022 budget process? Seeing
Lot better. Looks good.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say. Johnny did a tremendous job and made it all seem like we're right on target.
Let's follow that flow chart and we'll be good to go. Another, I think we passed the budget, I think the first time in March this year, and second year. And yeah, before that, we were kind of stuck in that June spot. So I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to it getting, closer and closer to the new year, to January, or even, some municipalities pass their budget in December. And that's a dream that I thought of. But Johnny, when, maybe we'll be able to get to there in a couple of years.
That's our goal. That's our goal. Yeah.
So we have the recommendation, and that's the report entitled 2022 Budget Process Be Received for Information. Okay, Councillor Clark, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hendricks. All those in favor? And that's carried. All right, is there anything for other business? No. Before we get to the bylaws, we have our Public Works Manager with us. He hasn't said anything. Do you want to give us a kind of, I'm just going to put you on the spot. Want to give us kind of an update of how that whole, emergency situation worked, and if anything along those lines, because I know it was a unique situation for September.
Yeah, it actually was very unique. I haven't been able to go through something like that in the 9 years here, all of that extreme. So we ended up closing, I think it was 3 roads, possibly 4. It was kind of a blur that night, but we had to close one the following day because the rivers were rising pretty fast. But other than that, the guys were out putting up signs, checking every single road 2 or 3 times. It was tiring, but at the same time, that's why we're here. So the guys were great. I can't say enough good things about them. When I call, they're always there. So just a big thanks to all them and staff getting on the phone late at night to declare emergency. It was much needed. Yeah, that's about all I got. It was a fun night.
All right, thank you, Coulter. I think I saw Councillor McKinnon's hand up.
Yes, just to bring to council's attention, a neighbor of mine, she was putting her garbage out late last Tuesday evening or morning, I'm sorry. And they came to our place. We're the only house that receives garbage collection between Scotchmere and Walkers. And they do a U-turn here and then go back down Scotchmere. They saw that she had taken her garbage out in the meantime. After they had come past her place, they picked it up, and she just wanted to say thank you for the service. She was very, very pleased.
Excellent. That's good to hear. And on that note, we should remind everybody to put their garbage out tonight or tomorrow morning before. That's my reminder. Whenever we have council, I always remember, got to get the garbage out after the meeting finishes. Okay, is there anything else for other business? Okay, seeing none. So we have some bylaws in front of us. The first motion is that bylaw number 49 of 2021, the Crothers McFarland drain, received the third and final reading, and this is the one that Councillor McKinnon declared a conflict on. So mover and seconder, Councillor Clark and Councillor Brody, all those in favor, and that's carried. And then the last one there, that bylaw number 62 of 2021, confirming proceedings for October 4th, 2021, received the first, second, and third and final reading. Mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councillor McKinnon, all those in favor, and that's carried. And if there is nothing else, a motion to adjourn at 8:04. Okay, Councillor Brody, Councillor Clark, all those in favor,